have your attention, ladies and gentlemen? At this time, we're going to ask all of our family members, if you will, those of you who would like to pay your final respects here at the casket, if you would do so, family members only. And once you've done that, family, we're going to have you escorted out this door into room 110 where Mother Mark will have a word of prayer with you. So all the family members, those who would like to pay your final respects, if you'd come at this time. Those of you that are friends, you'll be attending the service. If you'll just go ahead and make your way to your seats, and we'll begin the service in just a few moments. Pallbearers, you may also come down front as well.
When I was about 20 years old, I came into church one Sunday night, and I sat down next to Nani at their assigned pew, and I set my Bible in the pew in between us. And then she picked it up, and she marked a verse, and then she took a bookmark and wrote on it the words, "A favorite verse of mine," and she put it in that opening. Now, having two small kids, that bookmark is long gone. But before our opening prayer, I would like to read that verse. This is Micah chapter 6, verse 8. He has shown you, O man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? But to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. Let's all pray together. Father, we have gathered today as Nani's family and friends to remember and celebrate her life. Father, she had a truly unique and special love for everyone that she came in contact with. Father, not only was this, but she sought out lives to touch and souls to impact. Between her work here at Central, her involvement with Mobile Christian, her daycare that she founded, and so many other organizations within the community, Father, she has shown the love of Christ to more people than any of us here can count. Father, she truly exemplified what this verse says. And Father, I pray that you would be with each of us now as we move into a phase of our lives where Nani is not living just right down the road from us. I pray that you would help us to do the same, to take and apply her example. Father, I pray your blessing of peace on Nani's 5 children. They have borne a great burden in recent times as this day is approached. And I pray that you would strengthen them, knowing the courage and resolve with which Nani approached her final journey. And finally, Father, I want to thank you for the payment that you made for our salvation. Because without that, nothing that we do and nothing that Nani ever did would have mattered at all. But we know that today she is with you and she is with Papa. And we know that we all have the opportunity of seeing her once again. And in your Son's name that we pray. Amen.
I'll be reading Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
And I'll be reading from Proverbs chapter 31. An excellent wife who can find? She is far more precious than jewels. The heart of her husband trusts her, and he will have no lack of gain. She does him good and not harm all the days of her life. She seeks wool and flax and works with willing hands. She's like the ships of the merchant. She brings her food from afar. She rises while it is yet night and provides food for her household and portions for her maidens. She considers a field and buys it, and with the fruit of her hands she plants a vineyard. She dresses herself with strength and makes her arms strong. She perceives that her merchandise is profitable. Her lamp does not go out at night. She puts her hands to the distaff and her hands to the spindle. She opens her hands to the poor, reaches out her hands to the needy. She's not afraid of snow for her household, for all her household are clothed in scarlet. She makes bed coverings for herself. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. Her husband is known in the gates, and when he sits among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them. She delivers sashes to the merchants. Strength and dignity are her clothing, and she laughs at time to come. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. She looks well to the ways of her household. She does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and call her blessed. Her husband also, he praises her. Many women have done excellently, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceitful, and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Give her the fruit of her hands, and let her works praise her gates.
just settle in for a second here. This reading was prepared by Elizabeth Donette Fussell Erwin, Nani, for her mother at her funeral. And so this is a reading that she put together that we're going to read for her today. To the elect lady, Elizabeth Donette Fussell Erwin, Nani. I might have to say Nani, I'm sorry. From her children who love her. She was wife, mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, sister, aunt, friend, and a good example to all who knew her. To her family, she was a composite of all the ladies of the Bible that she loved to study and teach about. Like Rebecca, she loved only one man, and that started the first time she met Ralph Erwin. Like Sarah, she was a loving helpmate, sharing 59 years together until death separated them. Like Rachel, she helped take care of what he worked so hard to provide. Like Ruth, she was a good daughter-in-law and is loved like a sister by her husband's people. Like the Shunammite lady, she was always planning ways to make her home more livable and more comfortable. She was always willing to share it with family and friends. Like Esther, she was a leader in her family, ready to stand up for them to help in any way. Like Deborah, she was wise, and many people came to her for advice and counsel. Like Hannah, she prayed for a son and dedicated them to the Lord. Like Samson's mother, she prayed for guidance in raising her children. Like Mary, she saw to her children's physical, mental, social, and spiritual needs. Like Naomi, she was a good mother-in-law. She tried to love her children's companions like they were her own. Like Louise, she was a loving grandmother, always teaching and encouraging her grandchildren, of whom she was so proud. Like Martha, she was hospitable. She always enjoyed having a house full of company. Like Mary, Martha's sister, she knew when to choose the better part. She spent many hours studying the Bible and listening to the Master's words. Like Lydia, she made sure her household was at church services. She served the Lord's church faithfully all her life, and she has taught Bible classes over 30 years. Like the poor widow, she gave generously of her means to the church and other good works. She believed in and supported Christian education. Like the group of ladies that followed Jesus, she was always among friends, being an example in all good works, studying, teaching, visiting, encouraging. To the older ladies, she was a sister, and to the young ladies, she was a mother figure. She was always encouraging to them to be good wives, good housekeepers, strong women, to be faithful to the Lord, to bring their children up in the right way. To everyone she encouraged, live each day to its fullest. Do the best you can with what you have. Like the women who wanted to be healed by the Lord, through the past 3 months, since she has been so sick, she only wanted to touch his garment. She never asked to be well, only to be able to bear the pain. She leaned heavily on her faith and was an example to all who waited upon her. Her doctors and her nurses were amazed at her courage, and they were openly sad when they knew they could help her no longer. Like Dorcas, she shared her talents, helping others by teaching them handwork or giving her handwork items away. She believed in keeping her hands busy, and she never wanted to waste a moment. Like Priscilla, she believed in the gospel and wanted it preached in the very best way. She encouraged preachers, but did not mind speaking up when she thought they needed more study to preach the word more perfectly. Like the worthy woman of Proverbs, she was loved and loving. She was industrious and thrifty. She was caring and understanding. She was God-fearing. She was a Christian. She was loved, admired, and respected by her family, and she will be sadly missed. But as David said, we cannot bring her back, but we can go to her. We thank the Lord for her. Pamela, Eddie, Danny, Lisa, Jenny, Mark, Sylvia, Amy, David, Elizabeth, Ryan, Donnie, James, Ellen, Emma, Sergeant, Barton, Anna, and Abby, and all her precious great-grands.
Well, it has happened. We are now completely orphaned. 5 children between the ages of 50 and 66 are now left on our own. There is such a thing as adult adoption, so if there's any wealthy, childless couple who would like some kids, we would like to come as a package if possible. When Dad passed, I mentioned in his service the story we were always told about our parents meeting for the first time when they were in a group that was going to sing My God and I at a funeral. So I encourage any who are here and single to take a look around in the event there's any decent prospects. It would be an incredible joy to our mother to know that you found love at her funeral. Anytime talking with Mom in the years since Dad has died, it didn't take much for her to turn melancholy and want to talk about how much she missed him and her own eventual death. A good while back, I was visiting with her at the house, and she started in on the When I Die talk. And she told me that she was glad that I had spoken at Dad's service and how everybody thought it was a good funeral. Then she said, and this is a quote, "Now make sure when you do my funeral, it is funny and good." Nothing like keeping her high expectations game strong right through the end. I never minded her high expectations. And for all the grandkids and the great-grandkids, you better not let her down. I'm sure she will haunt you. It was early May 1978. I'm 10 years old. We are in a hurry to get out to Mobile Christian, and it is raining, like springtime in Mobile raining. Our grandfather, J.D. Poppy Fussell, was lying in the Mobile infirmary suffering from congestive heart failure that would claim his life on the 22nd day of that same month. But we had a mission, and on that day, we had to deliver assorted wooden arts and crafts to the school before the annual May Day festival that weekend. Our mother served as the president at Mobile Christian of the Parent, Teachers, and Friends Association, or PTFA, for a number of years, and May Day, the arts and crafts booth was her sandbox, or her briar patch, or whatever metaphor you wanted to use to describe a happy place. And we had a truckload of items that she had meticulously been working on to donate to the sale. Most all of which had started in the hands of our Poppy and his wood shop that straddled the backyards of our adjoining houses on Cherry Drive here in Saraland. I say truckload because we were actually in my dad's 1975 Ford F-150. That was his recently purchased new truck in 1978. A marvelous hunk of two-tone green American manufacturing with the Ranger trim package and the obligatory rod and gun camper shell over the bed, complete with these molded green shade bubble windows, a perfect fusion of rugged utility and 70s funk. Mom never drove the truck. I just learned recently that Danny got to drive the truck and stuck it in a ditch off Highway 90 in Mississippi. Pretty sure Dad never knew about that. To be fair, I'm pretty sure Dad didn't know that I wrecked the red and white Blazer in the woods behind the Lancaster's house a few years later, so I guess we're even on that. But on this day, time pressures and necessity created a circumstance where the only viable option was Mom driving the truck. So here we were, Mom and me, cruising along the well-worn path, Cherry to 43, 43 to Shelton Beach to Industrial Parkway, Industrial Parkway to I-65, I-65 to Dolphin, Dolphin to McGregor, McGregor to Airport, Airport to University, University to Greelot, Greelot to Knollwood, Knollwood to Cottage Hill. Traveled so often and for so long, I could still feel the curves and the turns, the smell of Smith's Bakery on the interstate, anticipate the traffic and feel the clock ticking. Despite the rain, the journey had followed the normal progress. Mom was up on the steering wheel, staring intently through the metronome of the windshield wipers, beating a time that matched her heart rate. People were waiting, depending on her to be there. Instructions had to be given. Decisions had to be made. Time for preparation was short as we turned onto Knollwood Drive. If you know this stretch of Knollwood Drive between Greenlight and Cottage Hill, you are familiar with the elevation features. There are a couple of dips along the road. They don't seem near as significant to me today as they did to my 10-year-old self. With fresh paving, we referred to them as Skateboard Hill 1 and Skateboard Hill 2. Not that any one of us ever dared ride a skateboard down either one of them, but to do so was a whimsical fantasy nonetheless. On this day, as we started down the first hill there on Knollwood, you could see that the rain had flooded the ditch, and the water was coming over the road at the bottom of the hill. Not sure exactly what the thought process was in that moment, but Mom certainly decided that it would not deter us from our mission. So, of course, about halfway through the raging flash flood, the truck stalled. Mom tried to restart it. Once, twice, a third time, no luck. Then, all of a sudden, all at once, the dam holding back all of her emotions, anxiety, broke, flooding the cab of that truck like the water's rolling underneath it. She balled up her right fist and she pounded on the steering wheel with all she could muster. I sat silent on the other end of the bench seat, suddenly aware that what was going on inside the truck was far more significant than the flooding that was happening outside the truck. I was acutely certain of two things. One, I could not fix the truck, and two, I could not fix Mom. So I sat silent. I'd never seen my mother out of control, without an answer, without the power of Mom to solve the problem. To that point in my life, I had never seen her as fully human. Her arm draped across the top of the steering wheel, she rested her forehead on her arm for a few moments, sobbing. Then looked up, wiped both hands down her cheeks, grabbed that key one more time, and turned the ignition. That truck chugged to life, thank the Lord. And she put it in gear, and we rolled out of the water, up the hill and onto the school. I did not appreciate in that moment all that she was processing on that day, the monumental stresses of adult life, time, obligations, family, death. I did know that how I viewed her, understood her, and related to her would never be the same again. I want to begin by thanking everyone for the tremendous outpouring of love and support to all of us over the past weeks, and especially the last few days. We want to thank the dear people at Mobile Infirmary, at the Linwood Nursing and Rehab, and at the SADS Hospice Retreat. And to the SAD family for creating such a facility in our area. We cannot thank them enough for the peace and comfort it provided during Mom's last days with us. And to Cindy and Ashley and Anna and Abby, who each sat with Mom at different times over the course of several years, we cannot thank you enough for your kind service and care for her, even when she was adamant she did not need it or want it. It allowed her to enjoy being at home far longer than it would have been possible otherwise. There have been so many special friends, many of you are here today, to Mom over the years, and I dare not try to name all, lest I inadvertently leave someone out. But you know how much she treasured your friendship. For me and Danny, I want to publicly thank my sisters, Pam, Jenny, and Amy, who have cared for Mom's needs for several years in a most tender and compassionate way. Mom has been ready to go since Dad died, and maybe even more so since her beloved little brother Harold passed just a couple years ago. Mom and Dad spent 60 years together, providing us a loving, safe Christian home, and being on this side without him was difficult. One night years ago, while Mom was recovering in the hospital from her cancer surgery, I was relieving Dad so he could go home for the night. And let me add, it was amazing to watch how each of them cared for each other during their times of illness. In the quiet while Mom slept, Dad made the comment, as if to himself, "I guess you've never really seen your mom down sick like this." And as I thought about it, he was right. For nearly 40 years at that point, I had never known my mother to take a day off. I'm sure she was sick, but I never knew her to spend a day in the bed too sick to do what needed to be done. Same went for our dad until he had the stomach ulcer situation and they discovered the aortic aneurysm. He had never spent a night in the hospital in 70 plus years of his life, not even to be born in one. After all that time together, we knew she hated being without him. I believe it is safe to say that the closest they ever came to breaking up in 60 years was over the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, which would no doubt be a terrible shock and embarrassment to the leadership, as well as a black mark on the brand of the Latter-day Saint organization, which touts such strong focus on family. Despite the role that music played in our family through the years, music was not necessarily Mom's art or craft. She loved music. She loved choral music, but to perform and to play was not her talent. But as we were young, if PBS or some other station had a program featuring the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, especially during the holidays, it was not uncommon for Mom to have it playing as everyone went about their daily activities. I think it was that she liked that they stuck to old traditional hymns and Christmas carols rather than the Stamps-Baxter quartet style that Dad loved so much. Regardless, back to how they tried to break up our parents. In the late 80s, we took a westward trip, which included a visit to Salt Lake City, Utah. As I recall, we arrived in downtown about lunchtime, and we spent a good part of the afternoon touring around the Temple Square complex. You would have to know my dad to appreciate how at once this was both fascinating and terrifying at the same time. The history and the beauty of the grounds are inspiring, but he had his head on a swivel the whole time, convinced that the next smiley 20-something-year-old elder was about to whisk us into a room for proselyte indoctrination on Moroni, Joseph Smith, something to do with a gold tablet and a pearl. Don't take any pamphlets. I'm not sure he actually said that, but it was understood. Mom, on the other hand, was really enjoying the tour, and especially when we got to go into the tabernacle, which she had seen so often on TV. We learned not even every Mormon gets to go in the temple. It is totally off limits to non-members for sure, but the public is allowed in the tabernacle. So there we were, standing in this beautiful space, learning about the marvels of its engineering and construction in the late 1800s, the amazing, almost perfect acoustics, and of course, the giant pipe organ that dominates the view inside. Did you know that the first pipes were hollowed out wood logs painted to look brass? Anyway, what we as kids did not appreciate was that Mom harbored some notion that we were going to come back the next day on Sunday for a service in the building to actually hear the choir sing. History is unclear exactly when she and Dad had their first discussion about that plan, but it became very clear as the day went on that there was a serious disagreement brewing about it. We drove a few miles to Provo to spend the night, and it was obvious Mom was not pulling Dad on board with her plan. The tension was thick. Not long after we settled into the motel room, Mom, without a word to anyone, got the keys to the van and left. Trying not to act too concerned, we sat watching TV for a while when someone finally asked Dad, "Where did Mom go?" "Don't exactly know." "When is she coming back?" "I'm not sure." So there we were, abandoned in a motel in Provo, Utah. Several awkward hours later, Mom did come back. Turns out she had found a local laundromat and had washed some clothes. No sense spending a few hours on the run, sulking and weighing the future of your marriage without getting some chores done. The next morning, Sunday morning, we located a group in the Yellow Pages of about a dozen folks in Provo meeting under the sign Church of Christ and attended worship. Pretty standard, nondescript stuff, but they were pleased to have traveling visitors stop by. Not sure if it was a small, still voice during that church service or some epiphany later while Dad was driving through the grandeur of the mountains that he made the decision that it would not be a good idea to continue on to his desired location of the Grand Canyon on that trip. Either way, the prospects of a few more icy days on the road had us heading east toward Alabama shortly after we crossed into New Mexico. For a long time, you had to be a little careful bringing up the Mormons in family conversation. Not quite as careful as bringing up Danny and Lisa's first wedding day, but pretty careful nonetheless. Lisa, I'm so sorry, baby. I'm so sorry. It's been 40 years, okay? Even though Mom spent most of her entire life in Mobile County, the fiber of her being was rooted deeply in the dirt of Butler County, particularly her maternal grandparents' farm in the Avant community just east of Georgiana. There were 9 children in the Barganier clan, and our grandmother was next to the youngest. This gave Mom a huge array of aunts and uncles and cousins, and as a young girl, she would spend summers with her grandmother learning all she could about their lives and life on the farm. As World War II drug on, a number of these cousins moved to Mobile for work, and some lived with Mom's family in Pritchard at different times, giving her older sisters that she cherished her whole life. All of this extended Barganier family, believe me, lived the lyrics of any one of Georgiana's hometown hero Hank Williams' songs. A few saw the light, but more of them routinely went honky-tonking around this town, so to speak. The Fussell clan of our grandfather was probably more honky-tonkin' Hank than Hank himself. And our cousin Al Middleton was here earlier, and I think he would attest to that. Pine Belt lumber mill people, living in company housing, buying from the company store, working hard and living hard, much like the depiction of coal miners in Kentucky or West Virginia. There didn't seem to be a lot of hope in anything but being an old man by the time they were 40. Our Alabama ancestors are truly from the group Professor Wayne Flint chronicled in his seminal work, Poor But Proud, Alabama's Poor Whites. In many ways, our grandmother that Ryan mentioned earlier, that Mom had written that statement about, Martha Opal Barganier Fussell, saved her family from that fate by force of will. Her Christian piety and determination to uphold a standard of etiquette made our grandfather toe the line. Her influence, combined with his own work ethic and skill, allowed him to pull his family far beyond the world he had known as a child. The start of the war in 1941 provided the opportunity that moved them from up the country to Mobile. Our Poppy went to work for Mr. Ben May, who had just formed the Gulf Lumber Company in 1940. For many years, Poppy took care of that mill, and Mr. May took care of Poppy. This amazing and probable relationship between a prominent Jewish businessman and a hardscrabble kid from the backwoods provided Mom's family with a solidly middle-class life on the white picket fence line Montgomery Avenue in the post-war suburbia of Pritchard, which Mom always described as Mayberry. When Mr. May traded vehicles, our mommy would often drive the one he had just been using. After our mom and dad married, Dad was working a second job at Gulf Lumber. Mr. May, whose only child was disabled, offered to pay Dad's tuition to Alabama if he would return and help run the lumber mill. Dad, with a wife and young child at the time, appreciated the gesture but felt he had to stay in Mobile and work. Our grandparents built their house here in Saraland in 1968 When the bricks were delivered to the site to start construction, the balance due was zero, paid in full by Mr. May. The Stimson family bought Gulf Lumber from Mr. May in the mid-1950s, and Poppy worked with them until he retired in 1975, having spent 35 years with the company. Sandy Stimson has shared with me in the past that when he retired, J.D. Fussell was the highest-ranking man in the company who was not part of their family. Their family attended the Plateau Church of Christ, which became the Central Church of Christ here in Saraland in 1974. Mom never wavered in her commitment to the church. She and Dad served it in so many ways it would be hard to discuss it all. But I know Mom loved teaching her classes and may have known more about the Old Testament than my professors at Freed-Hardeman. For many years as we were growing up, Mom taught the 5th grade class upstairs, right up there. Her goal was to have every child leaving 5th grade ready to commit to Christ by being baptized, and many were. It's hard to mention this period without mentioning Mom's relationship with Bruce Harrison. Bruce spent the better part of 10 years in Mom's 5th grade Sunday school class. It gave Sister Hazel a chance to attend the ladies' class, but perhaps more importantly, it gave Mom a chance to teach 5th graders about compassion to those dealing with challenges in life. And of course, Bruce taught us all lessons in unconditional love. In the late 80s, Mom moved into the ladies' class and taught it for almost 20 years. She would sit up late at night, especially on Saturday night, at the dining table, writing her lessons out in longhand. Pages and pages filled with passages from her Matthew Henry commentary, or perhaps Guy and Woods from the Gospel Advocate series, along with her own observations and applications from Scripture. Every week, regardless of what other matters of life swirled, she was preparing for her class. The church has truly been her family her whole life. So much so that we had people like the councilmans, who we referred to as Aunt Mary and Uncle Ray, who were not related to us by blood at all. But the relationship was just too deep not to call them family. Of course, their daughter Kay was Mom's lifelong friend, and in a real way, her sister. In addition to the Plateau and Central Church, our parents invested their lives in Mobile Christian School in support of a place where students could learn not just to read, write, and count, but to also learn what makes our lives worth living. Mom taught at the school in its first year, 1962, at the Old Pleasant Valley Church location. Later in the 70s and 80s, Mom and Dad worked with so many others, and some of you are here, to help the school survive. But after all of us had graduated, Mom would still go and return each year to help with the 3rd grade Bible Times Day, making costumes and setting up booths to display stories and characters and reading to the students. She attended everything her grandkids did at school to the best her physical condition allowed, and desperately wanted to be there when she couldn't. What we call Christian education, whether primary, secondary, or college, was not simply a hobby with our parents. It was a mission they were committed to, not just for their own, but for generations of young people. Mom was very proud that in our immediate family, her children and spouses, now grandchildren and their spouses, between high school diplomas and undergraduate degrees, there are currently 31 from Christian schools and universities, and hopefully a few more to come. Family, church, Mobile Christian, 3 of Mom's passions in life. But when her kids were grown and the grands began arriving, she added the title Nani to her resume. And out of her limitless capacity to love children, she opened the Happy Times Daycare. At first, this was keeping 3 or 4 babies in her house at Cherry Drive. And as it grew, Amy joined her in managing the operation, and they moved it here to the church at Central. There are a generation of people here in Saraland now in their late 20s and 30s, early 30s, who were loved and taught by Nani. Anytime she was able to be out in public, it was not unusual at all for some big linebacker-looking dude or some young lady, maybe with a new baby of her own, to come up and say, "Hey, Nani, it's me, so-and-so." And she would give a big hug. Along with everything else, our mother was a serial arts and crafter. Every fad or craze that came down the pike, she was willing to jump in wholehearted. Decoupage, gluing pictures and whatnot in layers and covering it with varnish to give it some 3D effect, was huge in the early 70s. Toll painting, basically painting flowers on wooden spoons and teapots, which required a special class taught by a local master. Dad liked to chide Mom and Pam for taking toe painting classes. For a while, she was constantly searching for scrap barn wood to build picture frames to hold pictures of barns. We spent at least 1 year doing latch hook masterpieces, which were these 3-foot by 3-foot net mats with an image printed on it, and you would do sort of a paint by number where you would tie these 3 or 4 inch pieces of yarn to it all across it in row after row, and eventually you would end up with a shag carpet leopard you could hang on your wall. It's priceless. Hammering out pictures on pieces of tin with a nail was one of Dad's favorites. Of course, Teddy and Shirley Mears led a whole ceramic revolution here at Central Church. Every 3-year-old at church got a breakable Easter bunny or a Santa Fe's hot chocolate mug where the hat was the handle. Mom worked along with Sarah Nairmore and others on the Central Wedding Decoration Collection, hundreds of pieces available at the ready to help any bride celebrate her big day. And finally, there was quilting, which was a lifelong passion Mother had picked up during those summers visiting her grandmother. She loved the ladies of the Azalea City Quilting Guild and missed so much not being able to attend over the last few years. The reality is that Mom's true canvas was you. Her true craft was encouragement. Like the strokes of a paintbrush on an old wooden spoon, she worked on broken people to help them feel beautiful again. Like pieces of old barnwood, she would help people find new purpose in life. Like ceramic greenware, if you needed it, she sometimes took that little sharp scraping tool and helped smooth out the rough edge. She could even put you in the hot kiln of rebuke if you needed it. Like the poor unsuspecting daycare dad she met at the gate on Cherry Drive one afternoon. Do you know what word little princess said today? No, ma'am. Well, she said she was mad and said, beep. Oh, no. Oh, yes. And she didn't learn that from me. But she's heard you say it, hasn't she? Yes, ma'am. Well, the next time she uses it in my house, I'm getting the belt after you. But like a careful stitch on a quilt, she would always bind your wounds in love. I recall the night we lost Allison Lambert Coxwell. And I was at Mom and Dad's, absorbing the blow and reaching out on the phone to some different ones. I called Dad's brother, our Uncle Howard, in Fairhope to let him and Aunt Frances know what had happened. I don't recall a lot of specific conversations I ever had with Uncle Howard, but I'll never forget his very short response to that very sad news. Mark, we know that the old must die, and the young will die. At the time, I thought it was a very cold and insensitive response to tragedy. But as I get older and reflect on what that means, it is a true assessment of our human condition. The death of the young is tragic. To lose too early the potential of life and what could be done and shared and accomplished is truly a loss to us on this side of eternity. But the death of the old is not tragic. It is not a net loss. It is just the natural order of life. Our mother lived all the life she could live well. She leaves nothing behind unfinished, and that she had a reasonable expectation to complete. Last Saturday evening, Her children gathered around her. We sang songs of heaven and rest. We held her hand. We kissed her forehead and spoke words of love. No unfinished business, no regret. What a blessing it is to see old age, to wring out of life a full number of days. Mom was so fortunate that she lived 60 years with the love of her life, that she never stood by the grave of a child, despite Danny's multiple creative attempts to accidentally end himself. She welcomed 2 sons-in-law and 2 daughters-in-law into her family and had the capacity to love them as much as she could love her own children. She was present for the birth of her 10 grandchildren, good Lord, and had them live right here in Mobile so that she could see them grow and reach adulthood, healthy, accomplished, and most importantly, saved by Jesus. Now she has 10 great-grandbabies between Mobile and Baldwin County, Memphis, Tennessee, and Tulsa, Oklahoma. And she cherished every minute she got to cuddle them in her arms. She went to her reward knowing that her entire family is united in Christ. Hard to ask for more than that. That is not to say her life was not touched by tragedy and loss. Mom was profoundly impacted as a teenager by the death of her first cousin, Tommy Mosley. Tommy was part of that Barganier clan, the son of our grandmother's sister, and Mom's same age. Due to difficult circumstances in his own home life, he was sent to Mobile to live for a while with our grandparents. Mom loved having Tommy around. She described him as funny and outgoing. But whatever Tommy was dealing with overwhelmed him, and he committed suicide by hanging himself in our grandparents' home on Montgomery Avenue. Thankfully, Poppy discovered him first, desperately tried to help him, but it was too late. I suspect Mom's lifelong compassion for the broken was in great part a response to the wish she could have somehow saved Tommy. The event certainly scarred her, but it also inspired her to act for the hurting. In that determination, she shared many difficulties with you, standing with you in times of fear, dread, and loss, helping you bear the load, encouraging you to go on, treating you like her own children. She loved the movie Pollyanna because she was a Pollyanna. She was a steel magnolia long before Olympia Dukakis and Julia Roberts tried bad Southern accents. She loved the book Shepherd of the Hills and the outdoor version of it in Branson, Missouri, about a family living in the Ozarks. She loved Spencer's Mountain, where Henry Fonda and Maureen O'Hara were trying to figure out how to send their son to college, the first in the family to attend. She loved Friendly Persuasion, where Gary Cooper and Dorothy McGuire tried to lead their pacifist Quaker family through the ethical dilemmas of the Civil War. She loved Fiddler on the Roof, about a family trying to hold on to their traditions in a changing world. She loved stories like Yours, Mine, and Ours, and With Six You Get Egg Roll, about the travails and joys of a blended family, a subject very close to her heart. If you sense a pattern, it is not by accident. Family, family, family. I haven't included much scripture, but I suspect if she could, in addition to what she shared with James, I think her favorite verse would be 3 John 4. I have no greater joy than to hear my children are walking in the truth. Other words from the Gospel of John come to mind as well. Our mother did many other things. If every one of them were written down, I suppose that even the whole world would not have room for the books that would be written. Well, at least Mobile County, Alabama would not have room. In 1758, an English pastor named Robert Robinson, inspired by 1 Samuel 7, where Samuel sets up the stone of memorial saying, "Thus far the Lord has helped us," pen the lyrics to what we know as "Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing." Familiar, beautiful words. Tune my heart to sing thy grace. Streams of mercy never ceasing call for songs of loudest praise. Here by thy great help I've come, and I hope by thy good pleasure safely to arrive at home. Prone to leave the God I love, here's my heart, oh take and seal it for thy courts above. As beautiful as those words are to speak, they are meant to be sung. Wes? Right, Mom. By the miracle of technology today, just for you, we're going to carry you out of here to the sounds of the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. Dad can rattle all the change in his pocket, clear his throat as loud as he wants, pull the back of his ear, check his watch, but without apology, they are going to sing for you. And I hope this sounds just a little like it did Monday morning when you walked through those gates into those courts above. I hope it was funny and good. We love you.